Welcome to 247 Real Talk. I'm your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you once again for another episode of the 247 Real Talk podcast. I hope that you had a great week since we last spoke, and we're back here again for another entertaining conversation. It's amazing because as I try to steer, the topics towards things, as I pick out in the news, just, things that are going on that impact us, I've been making this great effort to try to look at other social issues and stay away from the political issues, but they're so much intertwined and they're so blatant that we have to talk about them. So when I come back, we're going to talk about something that happened last Friday that I think in the current climate we just have to have a little bit more discussion about. We just can't gloss over it. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back. So welcome back to the 247 Real Talk podcast. I was on mute for a second there. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Hope you had a great week. If you're here in New York, you'll see that the weather has been up and down, and it's been challenging. I guess we got so used to things being sort of warmer winters that we've got these cooler temperatures, and it feels kind of strange, but winter is winter, right? And we have to get used to it, and we can't expect it to be like it was last year, where we had, I think, a little over an inch of snow for the entire winter. There were some flurries today already, and if that's a measure of things to come, I guess you got to batten down the hatches. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit, and I really do not want to keep this as a long podcast. I'm really been struggling to try to make them a little shorter so that you enjoy the content and you have the time to listen to it and hear the entire episode before you have to go do something else. So let's get through this really quickly, or as quickly as we can. So we're going back to Mr. George Santos, the congressman from New York, the representative from New York, from the House of Representatives, as a matter of fact. He's a representative from New York that was elected in I think it was the 3rd District or whatever in New York. It's just part of Queens and part of Long Island, I believe. Based on crazy lies he told about being Jewish and have worked for Goldman Sachs and had parents who were part of the Holocaust, all sorts of things. And don't quote me on all the lies because they were lies, right? But last we left off, we talked about the fact, and I read some of them. I think initially the federal government had charged him with 13 counts and indicted him on 13 counts. And then they had come back and they added 10 more counts. So he has a total of 23 counts he's indicted on by the federal government. From the beginning, when this started, and all these lies kept coming out in the news, and he, in certain even interviews on the TV, he admitted he lied, and he said, "I'm a bad liar" or whatever. This was embarrassing enough for the Republican Party. Now let's pause there for a second, because I've noticed that sometimes when I have to bring up an issue and it's at one party or the other, people get offended because that's their party. Let's put that aside. I'm having a conversation with you as one human being to another, one citizen to another, one person who's concerned about the faith of all Americans to another, one person who wants all of us to do well, to live a better life. I don't care what party you're from. If the person I'm speaking about happens to be a Democrat, then so be it. I don't care. If the person happens to be an independent, so be it. If they happen to be Republican, I don't care. This is about the situation. Let's keep the party affiliation out of it because I don't care. But if you belong to that party and this is about you, then you should be ashamed about this one. So its fellow Republicans in the New York State Assembly, they were ashamed. There was a point where they went to their leader of the House, the Speaker, and said, we want to bring a vote to expel Mr. Santos. They got the vote brought to the floor, and they did not succeed. Where many of their colleagues were asked, well, how come you didn't vote to expel Mr. Santos? Their colleagues basically said, we don't have an issue here, something to expel him here on in the House of Representatives. He has a 23-count indictment against him in the legal system, a federal indictment. He has not been found guilty. That's a legal issue. Until he's found guilty in the court of law, he is by no means should be punished for that. And they have a point, right? Because we do have cases where people, for whatever reason, whether they plea or whether there's some technicality, whatever it is, you're found not guilty. So everybody stood on this ideology that that's a criminal indictment, and the House of Representatives is not a court of law. But then they came up with, you know what? We do have a body in here that does a body of measure in here for the standards that should be set within the House of Representatives. And that's called the Ethics Committee, right? They have the Ethics Committee that investigates their own on the conduct, on ethics. And they're, as far as I understood it, a baseline ethical standard that you must uphold to be a member of the House of Representatives. So they embarked upon an investigation into Mr. George Santos using that tool, that committee, that now would determine, as far as we understood it, if he met if he met the standards that need to be upheld to be a member of the House of Representatives. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, the Ethics Committee came out with a report. Now, the Ethics Committee is a bipartisan committee. So, in terms of their investigation, their findings, there are no partisan ideological issues here. The head of the Ethics Committee, if I am correct, and I believe I am, is a Republican, by the way. As I understand it, they're saying that they reviewed some 172,000 pieces of documents. And after reviewing that 172,000 documents, they issued a report that was 61 pages long. A scathing, brutal report that detailed unforgiving ethical violations by Mr. George Santos. So much so to the point that they said that they came up with additional findings that they felt were criminal enough in nature that they referred them to the Department of Justice for investigation. Things that could possibly end up adding to the 23-count indictment that are already on the table for Mr. Santos. Based on their findings, now remember, let's pause for a second. Let's just do a quick refresher. I want to freshen your minds. This is now the committee that is the measurement, the bar for what you need to meet ethically to be a part of this club, this House of Representatives. Based on the findings and after they disseminated this information to all the members of the House of Representatives, and there's 400 and something of them, I believe the same members of I can't remember who it was exactly, but they brought a vote again to the floor. The new Speaker of the House of Representatives held a vote, and this time Mr. George Santos was voted out and expelled from the House of Representatives. We might want to say, yay, great, but pause for a second. They need 2/3 to do this, and they got the 2/3. But what caused my alarm was that over 100 members of the House of Representatives voted to not expel him. And while we want to say, okay, we got 2/3, he's out, people like me who do this kind of podcast and who look at what the by the people, for the people, citizens of America need explanations for, we look at these things. You didn't want to expel him because you said you're not a court of law, and that's not your measurement stick. Your measurement stick for determining whether someone belongs there is your ethics committee, a bipartisan committee that said this man has to go. Here is the proof, here are the documents, here is what he did. And yet over 100 of you said, okay, our own committee now has shown us how unethical this man is, how much evidence there is of criminal activity by our own committee. But we're not going to vote him out. And that begs the question. Do we have a House of Representatives where there are 100 and something people who have something to be questioned in their background? Are they worried that just in case, or they're sort of buying a get out of jail free card, or thinking so just in case someone finds them or digs up some dirt on them that they can, say, hey guy, I voted for you, or I voted not to vote this person out. What is going on here? This should have been an overwhelmingly unanimous vote. But it gets stranger. Because the Speaker of the House also voted not to expel him. So then I thought about it. Well, if the reason is not that all these people have something shady in their background, what could it be? Here's the other explanation. The Republican Party holds a very thin lead advantage in the House of Representatives. Voting George Santos out makes that lead even thinner. These 100 and something people put winning and advancing their agenda over the American people, over ethics, over the oath that's sworn when you enter into that agreement to do the work for the people because you were elected by the people. They put their need to hold on to power rather than saying he has to go and we'll figure this out some other way. We'll get another candidate who has ethics, who has morals and the ability to do this job, and we'll fight this race and we'll win this seat back. No. We rather keep the garbage than empty the garbage can and put fresh, make it fresh and clean again. Isn't it amazing what people will do to stay in power? I mean, we see dictators all over the world and we wonder why they do the things they do to stay in power. We wonder how people become so greedy and their vision becomes so blurred that they're willing to cross these kinds of lines to remain in power. So we kind of see the writing on the wall that these people were saying, look, we need to get our agenda forward. The Democrats are over there. We're going to have a much tougher time of getting our agenda forward because, well, now we have a bare advantage. If one or two of our members don't agree, we can't get anything forward. But we kind of put you there to work like that. If it was up to me, the numbers would be almost equal, or the numbers would be identical. Each party would have the identical numbers of seats. And so you'd be forced to work together to come up with policies and laws and initiatives that will that were for the better of all Americans, with compromises that work for the majority of Americans. And those are the things that will go forward for the betterment of society and the betterment of people. Like the nonsense with student loans, where half of you sit up there in the Congress, in the Senate, and in the House of Representatives, and get your PPP loans over $1 million forgiven, and then you go to court and you borrow $10,000 and $20,000 for people who are struggling to put food on their table and to pay their bills and to keep their lights on. Yeah, I stuck that in there. But I'm not going to digress that far, because this story about George Santos has a couple of more twists I want to bring to you before I sign off on this episode. I have the name of a certain representative, but I'm not going to call his name, not because I can't, because it's all over the news, but I want you to focus in on what I'm saying and not who it's about. So I'm going to tell you the story without calling his name, because, again, I want you to understand the actual issue here. There is a Republican member of the House of Representatives, and again, I'm calling Republican not because Democrat, Republican, Independent, because that's who he is. After George Santos was expelled, he goes in the news and he says, he says he donated to George Santos' campaign, and so did his mother. I believe, and there might be a few inconsistencies because I'm doing this from memory. I read the story a few days ago. He, I believe, allowed them to swipe $2,000 on his credit card, and so did his mother. After they both allowed that, Santos went ahead and swiped $5,000 on each credit card extra. I believe it's the FTC. I believe that's the commission that does it. There's a violation of something called over-donation. And he was now in violation of that. He received a letter, and he's saying it cost him $15,000 in legal fees to fix the problem, because he was in this violation of donation violations, campaign finance donations, or whatever they call it. So let's stop right there. Let's add this up. He gave $2,000. His mother gave $2,000. That's $4,000. Santos drew $5,000 more without his permission. That's $9,000. $5,000 more on his mother's card without her permission. $14,000. He spent $15,000 to clear it up. $29,000. He has the letter in his office that he says is proof, and on that letter it says that Santos did this to over 300 other donors. We should feel pretty bad for him, right? And I do. But the problem is, he had this information. And although he voted to expel Santos, while Santos was in the House of Representatives and this process was going through, it occurred to me that he sat on this information. He sat and stayed quiet on the fact that he was hoodwinked by Santos. He probably sat next to Santos a few times, the House of Representatives. I don't know what their seating is. He probably shook this man's hand, Santos' hand, a few times when he went to the House of Representatives to do his job. And he was aware that 300 plus people were also scammed. This should have been on the front page of the news the minute it happened to him. But for the sake of the party, for the sake of holding on to power, okay, to heck with the American people, to heck with all the lives that were affected, we're going to stay quiet. This is who we have running our country today. And now, as we come to the end, and Santos is out, and I'm looking back at all this and I'm saying, this is the most ridiculous thing that, this is a circus show in front of the American people. I said, well, Santos is out. It's over, right? Not quite. I'm driving to work early in the morning. I got on 10-10 winds in New York. And what do I hear? Santos has to make money, right? Well, he's not going to go to McDonald's. You know, if I were to McDonald's and he came for a job, I'd probably give him a job. I would keep him away from the cash register, right? He's on social media doing something for some social media thing called Cameo. I've never heard of it, but basically, you give singing telegrams, singing messages of support or whatever message you want to send to someone. And he's doing them. He started out doing them, I think, for $200 or $250 a pop, and now now he's charging $350, I believe, to do a singing telegram. It's a few seconds long. And 1010 Wins indicated like it seemed like the first two telegrams that he was hired to do, he was hired to do them by two Republican members of the House of Representatives. One was sent to Representative, I think, Bob Melendez of Jersey, telling him, you know, to stand strong and don't let these people in the House of Representatives don't do blah, blah, blah. And the other one was sent by someone else. So on top of that, on top of the fact that he was kicked out or expelled, on top of the fact that this ethics committee has shown you how unethical this man is, on top of the fact that he's gone on national TV and admitted he's lied over and over again, on top of the fact that he claimed he's Jewish, he's not, on top of the fact that he claimed his parents were Jewish and in the Holocaust but not, on top of the fact that he claimed he went to certain education facilities, institutions, but he didn't, on top of the fact that he claimed that he worked for certain companies that he didn't, now he's being supported financially, not doing a job like you or I would have to do. If we were in that position and we were expelled, we'd probably be at McDonald's flipping burgers. But no, he's getting $350 a pop to do a few seconds cameo and say, you know, it's a video message that says, hey, good luck to you, blah, blah, blah. Don't. And he ends it with a kiss, apparently. What is wrong with us as people? Who are we? My mind is boggled by who we are as human beings. What are we really doing here, and do we have the right to even be here as human beings anymore? We have an election coming up next year. And if I were you, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I'd be afraid. Because it seems like no matter who we elect, once they get into power, we'll be thrown a kick to the wayside like we don't exist. Our vote, our attention, what we have to say is only valuable for a few months before the election, and only it expires the minute we go into that booth and circle that dot. So the only power we have to make a difference in this country, to make a difference in unity, to tear down the walls, to stop the nonsense of racism and look at each other, the difference in the color of our skins, and looking at the wealth gap and trying to make it bigger and looking down on each other. The only power that we have to unite and make government do what we need them to do for us as people so we all have a better life. That only power lies in a few minutes when you step into that booth with that pencil and that voting card. It can't be I'm Republican all the way down the line. Shade them. It can't be I'm Democrat. Shade all the way down the line. Even before then to the primary, before the general election, don't choose the current president because he's Democratic. I'm hoping that for a field of Democrats who run against the current president, to be honest with you, we need fresh blood. We need new blood. We need people who understand the challenges that we're going through today. We need this fighting and bickering and all this nonsense to stop. We need people who care about us and people who have ethics. We need things to go into place, laws that require people who run for office to be completely investigated. If you announce you're running for office, you need to be investigated before you can be on the ballot. I was completely flabbergasted to find out that you could be, if you're an American citizen, born American, you could be a convicted felon in jail. You could run for president. If you win, they let you out. No. If you're a convicted felon, I'm sorry, you should lose that right. For president? For someone who's going to decide foreign policy? For someone who could start a war? Do you want a guy who may have been a celebrity, who has the gift of gab and sway minds at least for one term, who killed someone, who made horrible life decisions, who's sitting on death row on a sentence that was maybe commuted, to decide to run for president and able to sway enough people to win money? I mean, this is a scenario that's far-fetched, but the point is he's eligible to do so. We need to do the right things for each other so that our children's children have a country and a world that they can grow up in and have the best chance as everything around us is falling apart and deteriorating. No more George Santos-like people in our government. No more leaders of the House of Representatives, speakers of the House of Representatives, speakers in the Senate or anywhere that cannot make a decision to stand on their own decisions of their own committees, but rather stand on staying in power, even on the back of something that's dead wrong. And karma is strange, huh? Because I think it was today I was looking at the news and I'm seeing that, well, Kevin McCarthy is going to resign at the end of the month. I'm seeing that a few Democratic members of the House of Representatives are not going to run again. I think a few Republican members of the House of Representatives are resigning. So, no, despite all this compromise, all this compromising their ethics, the outcome of how close those two, the Democratic Party, the numbers end up, and the being forced to work together in a bipartisan manner for the people because they were put there by the people, that outcome may be not by their doing. They may end up exactly where they did not want to end up, despite all that they tried to undermine and do. Karma is crazy, and God is ever present. It's been a pleasure. You can see that, when these things happen, I have to speak on them. Sometimes it feels repetitive, but this sure wasn't. Every time you think a story is over, we have people in society who give us reasons to come back and say more about it. I've got another big story that's brewing in case you haven't heard about it. There's a big issue going on in Venezuela, the border between Venezuela and Guyana, that involves the United States and Exxon and Hess and Chevron and decisions made by the Biden administration. And we're going to talk about that soon. But right now, that's it for this episode. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you click that notification bell so you can know whenever my episodes go live. And please help me build this brand, build what I'm doing, because I want to not only spread this word, but like I've said to you before, I want to build something where I can start doing charity work out of this. Charity causes, funding causes, making a difference, putting a lot more behind what I believe in. And I believe in you, and I believe in me, and I believe in us. So until the next time, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other.